You walk into a room full of people you don't know. Your heart picks up. Your palms go slightly damp. You scan the room, smile at no one in particular, and suddenly forget how a normal human being is supposed to stand. And the weird part? Nobody is threatening you. Nobody is even looking at you. The room is just full of strangers. So why does your body treat a networking event like a near-death experience? The most common answer is you're shy, or introverted, or you just haven't put yourself out there enough. And honestly, that answer makes a lot of sense on the surface. Because if the problem is shyness, the solution is obvious. Just go to more parties. Talk to more people. Push through the discomfort until it stops being uncomfortable. So people try that. They go to the events. They force the small talk. They push themselves into more and more social situations. And sometimes it helps a little. But often, the nervousness is still there. Maybe slightly quieter, but still there. And that's when the story gets darker. Because if you've been putting yourself out there for years, and you still feel this way, the conclusion your brain lands on is, something is wrong with me. Everyone else seems fine. I'm the one who can't handle this. Here's what nobody tells you though. The nervousness you feel around strangers isn't a personality flaw. It's not weakness. It's not something that will disappear the more parties you attend. And it has almost nothing to do with how shy or confident you are as a person. It's actually one of the oldest survival systems in the human brain, still running in a world it was never designed for. Let's go back. Way back. For most of human history, you lived in a small group. A tribe probably somewhere between 50 and 150 people. You knew everyone by name. You knew who to trust. You knew who was dangerous, and then there was everyone else. Every person outside your group was a potential threat. They could be a rival, a raider, someone who wanted your food, your shelter, your resources. Your brain had one job in those moments. Figure out fast if this person is safe or dangerous. That system never went away. Today, your brain still runs that same threat detection program every time you walk into a room full of unfamiliar faces. It doesn't care that you're at a work conference. It doesn't care that the worst thing that could happen is an awkward conversation about what you do for a living. It just sees unknown people, unknown intent, unknown danger, and it reacts accordingly. Here's where it gets specific. Because the nervousness you feel isn't vague or random. There's an exact structure inside your brain that's causing it. It's a small structure called the amygdala, about the size of an almond, sitting deep in your brain, and its entire job is to scan your environment for threats and trigger the alarm system the moment it finds one. And here's the crucial thing about the amygdala. It doesn't reason. It doesn't pause to ask, is this person actually dangerous? It reacts instantly based on patterns. And one of the strongest patterns it has learned very, very early in your life is this. Unfamiliar face equals potential threat. Respond now. Ask questions later. When that alarm fires, your body doesn't prepare you for a conversation. It prepares you for combat. Your brain doesn't know you're about to introduce yourself at a work event. As far as it's concerned, you might need to sprint for your life in the next 30 seconds. So it packs your muscles with blood, floods your system with adrenaline, and starts cooling your core temperature through your skin. The problem is, you're trying to make small talk. But here's the second thing happening at the exact same moment. And this is the part that makes social anxiety different from every other kind of fear. Your brain isn't just running a physical threat assessment. It's simultaneously running a social one. Researchers call this social evaluation anxiety. And it's your brain asking in parallel, will these people accept me? Will they judge me? Will they find me boring, weird, awkward, or not worth their time? That might sound like vanity. But from an evolutionary standpoint, it's one of the most rational fears a human brain can have. Back in the tribe, rejection wasn't just embarrassing. It was potentially fatal. If your group decided they didn't want you anymore, you were on your own, alone in an environment that was genuinely dangerous. No shelter, no protection, no one to watch your back. Researchers at UCLA, neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger, scanned people's brains while they experienced social rejection and found something striking. The brain regions that lit up were the same ones that process physical pain, not similar regions. The same ones. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between being left out and being hurt. So when you walk into that room full of strangers, your brain is running two threat programs simultaneously. One says, "Are these people physically safe?" The other says, "Will they accept me or cast me out?" Both programs are firing at the same time, and both of them are making your hands sweat. This also explains something that trips a lot of people up. The nervousness almost always peaks before the social situation, not during it. Psychologists call it anticipatory anxiety. You're in your car in the parking lot, 20 minutes before you need to walk in. You're rehearsing how you'll introduce yourself. You're mentally running through every possible way the conversation could go wrong. Someone asks what you do. You give a weird answer. There's a silence. You try to fill it and make it worse. By the time you actually walk through the door, you've already mentally experienced the event a dozen times. And half of those versions went badly. This is your brain trying to protect you. It's running simulations, stress testing every possible social outcome, so you're prepared. The problem is, the simulation has no upper limit. You can always find one more thing that could go wrong, one more version of yourself that comes across badly. The brutal irony is that all this preparation makes everything worse. Because the more scenarios you run, the more dangers your brain finds. And by the time you actually arrive, you're already exhausted from an event that hasn't happened yet. Real strangers are almost always less threatening than the strangers your brain invents in the parking lot. Now here's the layer that almost nobody talks about. And it might be the most exhausting part of the whole thing. The nervousness isn't just about the strangers. It's about who you're afraid of becoming in front of them. When you're with people who already know you, you have a stable identity in their eyes. They have a version of you. You don't have to build yourself from scratch every time you open your mouth. With strangers, you're a blank slate. And that means you have to perform yourself, in real time, under pressure, with someone you've never met before watching. You have to decide, which version of me do I present here? How much of myself is appropriate? What if I get it wrong? Psychologists call this self-presentation anxiety. And it's why the nervousness tends to be worst in the very first minutes of meeting someone. And then, if things go reasonably well, it starts to fade. Because the moment there's a little shared history, even just 5 minutes of conversation, a small joke that landed, a single moment of genuine connection, the stranger becomes slightly less strange. Your brain starts to trust. The alarm gets quieter. So why do some people seem to handle all of this so much better? You've definitely met those people. The ones who walk into a room full of strangers and just start talking. Easy. Relaxed. Like it costs them nothing. Are they wired differently? Do they just not feel what you feel? Not really. Research shows that people who seem naturally comfortable with strangers aren't necessarily experiencing less anxiety. They've learned, sometimes consciously, often just through experience, to read that anxiety differently. There's a concept called anxiety reappraisal. Your heart is racing, your palms are damp, your chest is tight. One brain says, "I'm terrified." Another brain, with the same body, says, "I'm excited." The physical sensations are completely identical. The story told about those sensations is different. And that story changes everything. Because excitement pushes you toward the situation, and fear pushes you away. People who are comfortable around strangers have also, usually, accumulated more early experiences where meeting new people went well, where the social risk paid off, where the stranger turned out to be interesting, or funny, or warm. Those positive experiences slowly update the amygdala's threat model. The unfamiliar stops feeling automatically dangerous. This is why simply forcing more social exposure doesn't always work. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. Specifically, about having enough positive experiences to update your brain's prediction of what strangers tend to mean. So what can you actually do with all of this? 3 things, each one targeting a different moment in the cycle. Before the situation, reframe the sensation. When the anxiety hits in the parking lot, don't try to calm down. That almost never works, because you're asking your amygdala to stand down before it's seen any evidence that the threat isn't real. Instead, try telling yourself, I'm excited. Psychologist Alison Wood Brooks at Harvard tested this and found that people who said, I'm excited, before a high-pressure social situation performed better and felt better than people who tried to relax. The physiology is identical. The direction changes. Excitement is forward-moving. Anxiety is not. During the situation, name what you're feeling. Research by neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA showed that when you label an emotion, literally say to yourself, I'm feeling anxious right now, activity in the amygdala measurably decreases. You're not suppressing it. You're giving your rational brain something to hold on to. The label creates a small gap between you and the feeling. And in that gap, the alarm gets slightly quieter. In the conversation itself, get curious, not impressive. The most draining part of meeting strangers is the self-monitoring, the constant internal check of how you're coming across. Am I being interesting? Did that land weird? What do they think of me right now? That loop runs quietly in the background of almost every social interaction, and it is exhausting. The moment you shift focus outward, get genuinely interested in the other person, ask a real question, and actually listen to the answer, that internal monitoring drops almost immediately. Your brain can't run the social threat program at full volume when it's busy being curious about something else. And as a side effect, people almost always find you more interesting when you're interested in them. Curiosity is the one social skill that solves multiple problems at once. None of this makes the nervousness disappear completely. It's been baked into your brain by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. You're not going to think your way out of a survival system that old. But here's the part that surprised me most when I went through the research on this. People who understand why they feel nervous around strangers. People who know it's not a character flaw, but an ancient threat detection system running in the wrong context, actually report feeling less of it over time. Not because understanding fixes the amygdala, but because it changes what the anxiety means. Your brain stops reading the nervousness as evidence that something is wrong with you, and the moment it's no longer a signal of danger, just an old program misfiring, it fades faster. You're not broken. You're just running very, very old software. And honestly, so is everyone else in that room. If this kind of thing interests you, you know where the subscribe button is.